Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everybody to our Changemaker20, and I want to start by thanking you all for spending your afternoon with us. If this is your first time, this is a platform where we do get to chat with our subject matter experts in an open forum for all of you to ask questions and get the chance to speak with them directly. And so if you have any questions now or as we continue, please leave them down below on our chat. We have today Louisa Jewell, who is a speaker and author, a positive psychology expert that has spoken to over 50,000 people around the world about how to flourish both at work and in their personal lives. And so we'll be continuing our conversation with Louisa from our last Lunch and Learn. And in case you weren't there, Louisa has taken her deep background in psychology and neuropsychology and was able to translate the latest scientific research behind well-being into very practical and simple strategies that help reduce anxiety, build resistance, and discover true happiness in this life of isolation. And so we also did actually have the opportunity to learn about what Louise has been doing to make the most out of this isolation, as one of her goals is to get ripped. And so we're all looking forward to that. And so for many of us, it's definitely all about finding that balance between life and work. And for many of those who are working remotely, you may be attending to kids, as well as maintaining strong relationships with your partner. And so that can definitely be overwhelming. And so, Louisa, the last time we spoke, you spoke about the 6 pillars of well-being and happiness. Could you review those for the people here on this call today? And perhaps we can ask you more questions about resilience strategies within that context.
Right. So the last time when we did the webinar last week, I talked about the 6 pillars of well-being. So these are all these 6 components are things that contribute to your psychological health. It's not about mental illness, it's about mental health. And I talked about how the 6 pillars within each one, I talked about some suggested activities you could do to promote each one to actually increase each one. So the 6 pillars we use what's called, the acronym is PERMA-V, and that stands for, P stands for positive emotions. So are you prioritizing some positivity in your day? We talked about engagement. So are you able to be fully mindful in your day? We also talked about R, which is for relationships in the model. So having positive relationships, really critical to our well-being. The M in PERMA-V stands for meaning and purpose. So can we make meaning of some of this today and what we're going through? The A in PERMA-V is for positive accomplishment. So we as human beings love to be accomplishing and being productive. So can you set some goals during this time? And then the final one, V, is for vitality. And that's really about your physical health. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you moving your body and exercising every day? So those were the 6 pillars of well-being and happiness. And, perhaps maybe what we could do is, if people had any questions about that, or if they want to know more strategies within the context of that PERMA-V model, or whatever questions people have, we can talk about that now.
And Louisa, as we get these questions trickling in, for people that are working at home or people that own businesses, what can organizations or those business owners be doing at this time?
Well, I think what's really important at this time is to have a mental health strategy at this time, because what we're now seeing, because it's been a few weeks of isolation now, people are really having mental health struggles. So you could be seeing people falling into clinical depression or clinical anxiety. I was talking to one of my clients the other day on the phone. He's getting more and more calls from people where people just can't handle it. They can't handle the stress of work and the stress of coronavirus. People are really fearful for their lives, for their families, which is totally understandable. And then on top of that, have to continue to do their work. So this is really putting pressure. So if companies have not put together a mental health strategy, I think this is the time to have a mental health strategy. And that's certainly something that I can help with, that through Talk Boutique. That's something that, we can help organizations with at that time. I think as well, that organizations need to be thinking about how to support their workers from a mental health perspective. And again, the 6 pillars of well-being are a good place to start. That if, every day you're thinking about how you can give people more of a, perma V day, I think that is something that, if those things are being done on a daily basis, those are some proactive things that organizations can be doing to promote higher levels of well-being while people are going through this crisis.
And given that we're kind of caught off guard with this, the quarantine, the self-isolation, and people being, forced to work remotely, just kind of all happened from nowhere. And amidst this, companies still had to, work along with what they had to do just to keep themselves going. And so for the people that, or for the business owners and the leaders within these organizations who are now trying to retroactively engage their workers or their employees, how can they help engage them now, if they've seemed to maybe lose a little bit of that engagement, and help keep them positive as they're adjusting to working from home?
Well, one of the things I suggest is that they still bring people together at a personal level and in an informal meeting. So have a virtual water cooler. Like, for example, I have virtual water coolers every Monday and Thursday. You guys are having a, what I would call a virtual water cooler by bringing together everybody at lunch, right? So you've got a virtual lunchroom, right? I think it's important to maintain those kind of social ties, even if you just bring people in to say hello, how are you doing, what's new, what's happening, not necessarily talking about coronavirus, just sort of, engaging people, because we are social creatures. And having that social interaction is not just a nice to have, it's actually really critical for our well-being. So we get that when we go into the office. We run into people on the way to the office. We do chat with people at the water cooler if we're getting a coffee or doing something in the kitchen, or running to the photocopier to grab something, or the printer, right? We run into people. We have those kind of little collisions, right? We know from the research too that the more collisions we have, the more innovative the company is. And so a lot of these designers are starting to design an office in a way that people actually do socially collide with each other to increase that kind of innovation. So we're not doing that anymore. So it's important that we continue to allow people to have a particular space that they can come together and just chat. I saw one company too, every Friday, there's one of the leaders compiles all the funniest things that he came across that week. And I forget what he calls it now, and everyone expects it. So on that Friday, they get this whole compilation of really funny, hilarious things, and particularly in their industry. They happen to be in interior design, and it's really, really funny. And so he's taken upon himself to just do that every single week. So, I know with my colleagues, we send something funny out every single day, and that keeps us going. Just keeping to understand that laughter is a way to release some of the stress out of your body. There is a physiological response to all of this stress. And one way to be able to undo the effects of negative emotions is to put your body into positive emotion. So laughter can do that. And what we find is that it can undo there's a cardiac activation every time we have that kind of negative stress. Positive emotions undoes the effects of that cardiac reaction. So it's good for us to be in positive emotions. So anything you can do to laugh, to watch an inspiring video, to, if you get out for a walk and be able to clear your mind, cuddle your dog, all of these things are things that, people can be doing throughout the day. And another thing that we know, and we talked about this at the webinar too, is one of the most stressful things is when we have uncertainty. Our brains do not like it when we are just not certain and cannot predict the future. Well, isn't this the perfect storm for such a stressful event? Because none of us really know, how this is gonna play out. There's some things that are under our control, but a lot of it is out of our control. So anything teams can do to reduce the uncertainty. I was talking to a friend yesterday and she said, Louisa, I don't know if my company's going to go out of business. I don't know if I'm going to lose my job next week. So anything that companies can be doing or teams can be doing or leaders can be doing to kind of every week give an update, here's where we're at this point, we're not laying anybody off. We don't see that for the future. Anything, like obviously you're not going to lie to people, but if you're certain about certain things, send out as much information as possible to reduce the uncertainty in people's minds, because that is really what causes people a lot of stress and anxiety, is to have that uncertainty. So the more certainty you can give people, the better.
That's awesome. And I agree. Memes are definitely a silver lining throughout all this. They've been
Yeah.
great. Really just bringing laughter to a lot of different subject matters. And now going into the people that are now working at home, or who may not be working as of right now, and they're home a lot more than what they're used to. They're spending a lot more
Yes.
time with their partners, a lot more than used to, maybe more time with their kids, a lot more than they're used to, and maybe in family members a lot more than they're used to. And so how do we adjust to that and just really maintain those relationships and navigate through that?
You know what I say to people? I say, savor it. Savor and cherish it. Like my daughter's a teenager. She's 19. She doesn't really want to hang out with me anymore. And she's kind of being forced, to hang out with me. And you know what? I am loving it. I'm loving that I'm spending time with her. So instead of seeing it as a negative, I'm trying to say, you know what? When am I ever going to have this time to be able to spend, with my beautiful daughter? And I'm just sad that my other daughter is in Vancouver, so she's on the other side of Canada. So I try to talk to her as much as possible. And so that kind of makes me sad because, as a mother, you just want to keep your children close with you.
Mhm.
But I just say, look at it as an opportunity. Now, I know a lot of people, maybe if they're in a strained relationship with their partner, are saying, I don't want to spend time with my partner. And that might be a very difficult situation. And I loved Prime Minister Trudeau, and he reached out to the children, of Canada, because there are children who may be in abusive situations, and he gave the kids' help phone number. So if you do find that you're in those situations, please do call. Please do call for help. Don't feel that you are alone in those particular situations, and and get help if you need it, because the police officers are still working, our emergency services are still working. So if you do feel that way, know that help is available for you still. Don't feel that you have to be stuck there. And again, maybe this is a time for you to re-engage with your partner as well. Find new ways to bring your relationship to another level, by doing things together, right?
It's amazing. Yeah, I completely agree. And I want to read this word for word because it's a very interesting question that we just received. And so, being an advocate, and this is from Joanne, being an advocate for mental health and a person who suffers from angst and panic, I've really had to reframe my mindset about this whole pandemic. But do you have any tips on how to handle criticism for being overly positive or weirdly calm during this crisis and not letting the negative emotions and energy of others affect you?
Oh, okay. So she's receiving criticism for all of this. So, the way that I respond to something like that is I say, there is a way for me to protect myself, to protect my family, and to protect my community. And I am doing everything in my power to do that. Everything that is in my control, I am doing. I'm washing my hands 50 times a day. I am staying home as much. I haven't been out of the house. I can't even remember the last time I went out of the house. I have been washing everything that comes into my home, scrubbing it down. I have been scrubbing down the mailbox, even the mail that comes in, I'm opening that up and making sure that the outside, because I don't know who's touched it, right? And so I am doing everything in my power to be able to do that. So just because I'm positive and calm doesn't mean that I'm being irresponsible. And I think that's where people get confused. They think if you're, just positive, then you're just going to go out and start, licking handrails or something, which is right?
Maybe to reframe it, like, what if you're a positive person about the whole situation? You see the good in it and you see the bright side of it, but people are being very negative around you, saying, you know, it's a lot worse than it is. And it really does affect your energy on that level. Like, what would you say to that?
Well, first of all, when people are really negative, I always reach out to them and say, can I help? Because if I'm really positive and calm about it, then maybe I've got a better hold on this than other people. Are they struggling? I have had people who are crying, calling me, right? So I do say to people, if I'm doing okay, then I'll say to people, if you need help with this, then call me. With other people who are just being overly negative and not really helpful, this is not, it's not constructive with regards to what they're doing, then I kind of limit my FaceTime with those people. I really do. Unless I can help them in some sort of way, I don't watch the news. I have news sources that I go to keep up to date as to what's happening. I listen to the press conferences that come out daily to understand what's happening. But I don't watch the news. I don't fill myself and I don't put myself in front of people who are overly negative, because then that will bring me down. So I say limit your time with those people. And even if they're family members, then I say, look, if I can help you in some way, that's great. But otherwise, I need to limit my time here, because I only have a certain limited amount of mental resources to handle all of this, and all of those are like fully being utilized to stay positive in this particular state. And I really cannot afford to be surrounded by people who are just, unconstructively critical. If you've got something interesting and constructive to say that's going to help me, great. Other than that, if you're just going to feed me with all this, like I have somebody who's sending me all the Trump stuff, and I've just blocked that, because it's like, I'll listen to some of the press conferences to just understand what's happening there, but I don't need to be seeing his Twitter, feed, and that's just unnecessary negativity as far as I'm concerned.
And I that went by really quickly. I think that's all the time that we have today. Louisa, I feel
Oh,
like we
wow.
could give you a time slot every single week, because I personally can't get enough. And I'm sure other people probably feel the same way. And so with that being said, I do want to thank everybody who tuned in today for our Changemaker 20, as it is all the time that we have. But if you do have further questions or want to book Louisa for any custom virtual event or any of her consulting, just please shoot me an email, and I'd love to make sure you guys get connected. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we have Louisa. And so there were still a lot of questions that I wanted to go through. And if we didn't get a chance to get to yours, send them in anyways, and we can have them prepared for next time.
Yeah,
Tomorrow,
I'm happy to come back, Daniel. If you want me to come back, I'm happy to come back. I think
we
people do need this information.
I 100% agree, and I want to discuss with you the next time we can get you back, because I'm very certain that this was not enough for everybody. And so, with that being said, however, tomorrow we will be having a much lengthier lunch and learn with Jill. Jill is an experienced world-class restaurateur and a business consultant, and she has been called a science translator, as she's invented high-powered tools that are very easy to apply with high ROI. And so, stay tuned for next week's Changemaker 20. Stay tuned on our agenda for the next time Louisa is going to be on here. And we're going to be on the same time from Tuesdays to Thursdays as we continue our discussions with other subject matter experts. And in the meantime, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. Thank you.
Stay well, everyone.